Here's something nobody tells you. You can have a great job, a solid paycheck, and still be getting poorer every single month. And you wouldn't even know it because nothing about your life looks like a crisis. No maxed out credit cards, no missed rent, nothing dramatic. Just a slow, quiet leak. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly where that leak is coming from. Because I'm walking you through 7 signs that your current lifestyle is silently draining your net worth. And a couple of these are going to hit way closer to home than you'd like. Let's start with sign number 1. And it's the one most people will never admit to, which is lifestyle creep tied directly to your paycheck. Here's how this usually plays out. You get a raise, or you switch jobs for more money, and almost immediately, your spending rises to match it. The apartment gets a little nicer. The car payment goes up. You start eating out more because, hey, you can afford it now. On paper, you're earning more than you ever have. But here's the part that should actually scare you. Your savings rate, the percentage of your income you're actually keeping, hasn't moved at all. Let's put real numbers on this. Say you were making $60,000 a year and saving 15% of it. That's $9,000 a year going toward your future. Now you get a promotion to $80,000. If your spending grows right alongside that raise, and you're still only saving 15%, you're saving $12,000 instead of, say, $20,000 if you kept your expenses flat and banked the extra $20,000 in raises almost entirely. That gap, roughly $8,000 a year, compounded over just 10 years at 8%, is well over $115,000 you never got the chance to build. The scariest part of lifestyle creep is that it feels like progress. Your life is visibly upgrading, but your actual wealth, the number that matters, is standing completely still. Sign number 2 is what I like to call invisible subscriptions, and I don't just mean streaming services, although those absolutely count. I'm talking about the entire ecosystem of small recurring charges that have become so normalized you've stopped seeing them as spending decisions at all. The gym membership you haven't used in 4 months. The 3 streaming platforms. The meal kit box. The app subscriptions renewing quietly in the background. Individually, none of these feel like a big deal. And that's exactly the trap. Let's say you're paying $220 a month across all of these combined, which honestly is on the low end for a lot of households these days. That's $2,640 a year. Invested at 8% annually instead of spent, that same amount contributed every year for 20 years grows to roughly $128,000. The reason this one is so dangerous is that these charges are designed to be forgettable. Companies want you to set it and forget it, because the moment you actually sit down and audit every recurring charge hitting your account, you usually find at least a few you can't even explain anymore. Now let's talk about sign number 3, which is financing your identity instead of your assets. This is a slightly different flavor of the car trap that a lot of finance channels talk about, but I want to go one layer deeper here. It's not just cars. It's anything you're financing primarily because of how it makes you look rather than what it actually does for you. The designer bag on a payment plan. The watch you bought to treat yourself after a hard year, financed over 12 months. The renovation that wasn't really about function. It was about what your house looks like when people come over. Here's the math that should worry you. If you're carrying, say, $8,000 across a few of these buy now pay later or financed purchases at an average interest rate of around 20%, which is common for these kinds of consumer credit products, you're paying roughly $1,600 a year just in interest on things that are actively losing value the moment you own them. That's not building wealth. That's actively paying a premium to make yourself poorer while it looks like you're doing fine. The identity trap is sneaky because the purchases themselves aren't necessarily irrational. The identity trap is sneaky because the purchases themselves aren't necessarily irrational. This actually brings us to a topic that connects almost every sign on this list, which is that most people have no idea where their money is actually going in the first place. If you've never sat down and actually tracked your spending for even a single month, I promise you there's a leak somewhere you haven't found yet. That's genuinely worth 20 minutes of your time this week, because you can't fix what you can't see. Sign number 4 is carrying good debt that's actually terrible debt in disguise. Now, I want to be careful here, because not all debt is bad. A reasonable mortgage or a low-interest student loan tied to a career that pays off can absolutely be a wealth-building tool. But a lot of people are walking around telling themselves their debt is good debt when really it's just debt they've made peace with. The classic example is a home equity line of credit that started as a renovation loan and slowly turned into a general spending account. Or a 0% intro APR credit card that quietly rolled into a 24% rate the second the promotional period ended, and nobody noticed because the minimum payments still looked manageable. Here's what that costs you. A $15,000 balance sitting at 22% interest, if you're only making minimum payments of around 3% of the balance each month, will take you close to 20 years to pay off, and you'll pay more than $19,000 in interest alone, on top of the original $15,000. That's over $34,000 total for something that might have started as a $15,000 problem. The lesson here isn't that debt is evil. It's that you have to be brutally honest about which debt is actually working for you and which debt is just quietly working against you every single month. Sign number 5 is what I call the convenience tax, and this one is probably costing you more than you think, because it hides inside choices that feel completely reasonable in the moment. Ordering delivery instead of cooking because you're too tired. Grabbing a rideshare instead of taking transit because it's raining. Paying for same-day shipping instead of waiting 3 days. Every single one of these decisions is individually fine, and honestly, some convenience is worth paying for. But when convenience becomes your default setting instead of your exception, the math turns brutal fast. Let's say the average American spends around $3,000 a year more on food delivery and takeout than they would if they cooked even half those meals at home. That's a conservative estimate for a lot of households. Invested instead of spent, over 25 years at 8% average returns, that's north of $236,000. That number should stop you in your tracks. The convenience tax is one of the sneakiest signs on this entire list because none of these purchases feel like financial decisions. They feel like small acts of self-care. And sometimes they are. But when they become the default rather than the exception, you're not buying convenience anymore. You're quietly buying away your future. Sign number 6 is staying in a job or a career lane purely out of comfort, even when you know you're underpaid for your market value. This is the one people talk about the least, because it doesn't feel like a spending problem, it feels like a stability decision. But think about the math for a second. If you're sitting at a job that's paying you $8,000 to $10,000 below market rate, and you stay there for 5 years instead of switching or negotiating, you're not just losing that $8,000 to $10,000 a year. You're losing every raise, every bonus, and every retirement match calculated off that lower base, compounding year after year. A $10,000 gap sustained over just 5 years, once you account for lost compounding on retirement contributions and raises calculated as a percentage of a lower salary, can easily cost you well over $100,000 in career earnings by the time you're a decade out. Comfort has a price tag, and it's usually a lot higher than people assume, because unlike a bad purchase, you can't see this leak on a bank statement. It just quietly shows up as the gap between where your net worth is and where it could have been. And sign number 7, the one I think most people are guilty of without even realizing it, is measuring your progress against the people around you instead of against your own plan. This is the quiet engine behind almost every other sign on this list. You upgrade your car because your friend got a new one. You book the more expensive trip because everyone in your group chat is going. You feel behind, not because your actual numbers are bad, but because someone in your social circle appears to be doing better. Here's the problem with that instinct. You are almost never seeing someone's full financial picture. You're seeing their car, their vacation photos, their new kitchen. You are not seeing their debt, their savings rate, or their actual net worth. Comparing your real financial situation to someone else's curated highlight reel is one of the fastest ways to justify spending decisions that don't actually serve you. The fix here isn't to stop caring what anyone thinks. It's to build a plan based on your own numbers, your own timeline, and your own goals, and then measure your progress against that plan instead of against a moving target you'll never actually see the full picture of. So let's bring this all together, because I don't want you walking away from this video just feeling anxious about your spending. That's not the point. The point is that every single one of these 7 signs shares the same root cause. They're all invisible by design. Lifestyle creep feels like success. Subscriptions feel too small to matter. Financed purchases feel justified in the moment. Bad debt gets rebranded as good debt. Convenience feels like self-care. Career comfort feels like stability. And social comparison feels completely normal because everyone does it. None of these decisions look like financial mistakes individually. That's exactly why they're so effective at draining your net worth without you ever noticing. So here's what I actually want you to do with this. Pick just one of these 7 signs, the one that hit you the hardest while watching this, and go audit it this week. Pull up your bank statement and actually look. You don't need to fix all 7 at once. You just need to find the one leak that's costing you the most and patch it, because the version of you 5 years from now is either going to thank you for catching this early, or wonder why the gap between where you are and where you want it to be kept getting wider every single year. Let me know in the comments which of these 7 hit closest to home for you, because I have a feeling most of us have at least 2 or 3 we're guilty of. If this video helped you see your spending a little differently, there's another video on this channel that breaks down exactly how to build a simple monthly budget that actually sticks, and I think you'll want to check that out next. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.